Now, let's bring in a great friend of this show, Liberal Senator Alex Antic, Senator there for South Australia. Alex, great to see you as always. Want to quiz you about what you're expecting from the reshuffle, that poor old Albo's reshuffling the worst hand anyone's ever held. But anyway, but also we are seeing, since Kamala Harris, but also beforehand, a lot of conservative commentators, politicians, media people and others, they seem to be stuck with this Trump derangement syndrome. Even as Trump survives assassination attempts and is endorsed as the candidate, we still see members of the so-called conservative media calling Trump loathsome. One suggesting yesterday that, Kamala wasn't quite as bad as Trump or something like that. What do you make of this? Why do conservatives seem to struggle, or a certain type of conservative seem to struggle? Rita has corrected me, a certain type of conservative, thank you, Rita, struggle to accept the benefits of Donald Trump. Tell us about it.
Well, I mean, Rowan, it's a great point, and I've been reading about this for 5 or 6 years. The whole Trump phenomenon, the Nigel Farage Brexit phenomenon, and the pejorative use of the term populism. I was always struck by that. I asked Nigel Farage that when he spoke to Parliament, we spoke to a group in Parliament about why it was that populism was considered to be this evil, and he said, "I don't know. It's politics surely is about representing people." And so, I've found it quite puzzling as to why it is that the establishment Conservatives have been so up in arms about someone who, ultimately is fighting for his tribe, is rejecting globalism in a sense where it's stealing jobs from the United States people. Really, populism in that sense is nationalism in one sense. It's representing your tribe and doing it to the exclusion of those who seek to try to do the wrong thing by your people. Politics has sort of, I think, descended into this swamp of let's try and say what we like until we get into power, then try and do sort of what our side says, and then kind of, we'll sort of work it out in between. I don't like that. From my point of view, I want someone that tells me how it's going to be, who says what they does and do what they say when they get there. And to me, that strikes me as being what populism is. I think there's almost a sort of a form of elitism in conservative ranks about what the likes of Trump, Farage and others, Javier Milei in Argentina. Yep. If it's a product of grievance, then isn't there something to be said about the current state of politics? Don't we need more people? The West will be a better place if we get Donald Trump in the White House and Peter Dutton in the Lodge.
Agree, 100%. James?
Well, Alex, one of the things that I'm sort of struck by here is the way that everybody says, oh, Trump's not transparent, oh, Trump will be a dictator and so on, Trump will be anti-democratic. We've had in the last few hours further reports come out about what exactly happened in the lead up to Joe Biden stepping back from the presidential race, including that apparently, according to investigative reporter Seymour Hersh, that Barack Obama called the president, Joe Biden, and said Kamala Harris was ready to invoke the 25th Amendment on him if he did not step down. Now, we have had no curiosity from the media, which 6 weeks ago told us that Joe Biden was fine, 3 weeks ago started to ask questions, and now tells us that Kamala Harris is the bee's knees and absolutely fantastic. Everyone should get behind her. What do you make of the willful blindness that people have about this really untransparent and undemocratic behavior of the left?
Well, the first thing I'd say is it's as predictable as it is the night following day. In fact, Rita and I spoke about it during the week on her show about how within days we would see Kamala being the darling of the left and the darling of the media. And of course, that's exactly what's happened. We've seen a complete quantum shift in her appearance. And so, look, I think this is intriguing in the sense that what it's done is actually thrown 14 million votes of Democrat primary voters out the window, and it's extraordinary. We've had Joe go right up to the wire. Everybody in the White House would have known there was a problem many, many months, if not years, prior to getting to this point. And yet they're pointing the finger at Donald Trump for being a threat to democracy, even though we've got the benefit of 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency in the White House to prove that actually that's nonsense. So, I think we're going to see this now shift into action. The media will be willfully blind to some of the flaws and problems of Kamala Harris. And we see it across all boards. By the way, when January 6 happened in the United States, we knew everything about every single person they were investigating, their mother, their cat, anyone that walked in a kilometre radius of the Capitol on that day. We don't know anything about the bloke that shot at Donald Trump. There's no news about him at all. And in fact, that whole incident has just been swept under the rug. I mean, it's a fallacy. It's a joke.
It is absolutely, and that's why trust in the FBI and in those bodies is at record lows in the US, because we know they've got into his devices. They would have some idea about his ideology, his background. There's been nothing shared, nothing's leaked, nothing.
Except he was a Republican, registered Republican. Right.
In Pennsylvania, a close primary state where, that means absolutely nothing. But on populism, why is it when you've got something like Brexit in the UK or Javier Milei in Argentina, Giorgia Meloni in Italy or Trump in the US, that's populism and it's bad. But when it's an Obama phenomenon, that's not populism. That is just unity and wonderfulness. Why is any sort of centre-right... And populism is just democracy. It's majority rule, isn't it?
Yeah, well, in fact, populism now is far right, I assume. Everything's far right and white supremacy these days. So I assume they are the same thing. Look, I mean, once again, we're suffering from the same question and answer, really, isn't it? This is all what the media want it to be. And, you're absolutely right. I mean, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, isn't it? So, it is. I think the message here is, with the exception of outsiders, because this show tells the truth, we have to be very sceptical of what we read in the media. I think that is the bottom line. Put your critical thinking hats on, people.
Now, just have a listen to Donald Trump speaking the other day about what you've mentioned, the 4 years. He's got the track record, but what's he offering from day one of a Trump presidency? Have a listen.
On day one, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto the lives of our children. Thank you. It's true. Save our kids is right. Save our kids is right. And you're right. Thank you. And I will not give one penny to any school that has a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate. Not a penny. And I will keep men out of women's sports, if that's okay.
Now, Alex, it is so simple. Why is that so hard? Why? I know you're a member of the party and you can't. Why am I not hearing very similar words from Peter Dutton and the senior Libs about what they will do? Why is it so hard for Australian Conservatives to confront the culture wars head on, tackle them head on? Because that's what Australian parents want to hear.
Yeah, look, they certainly do. And on this subject of education, my view is, and I know this view is shared widely in amongst our ranks, education actually is one of the key battlegrounds in this next period. And I think there are a load of mums. I talk to mums all the time, specifically mums. And the mums, by the way, are the ones who are getting politically active in this state. About their concerns about that very issue. That message is starting to pervade through, and the issue of education, not indoctrination, is a massive one for the next election. It's an election-winning strategy, in fact. One thing I will say is I was really pleased to see some of the comments reported today that Peter Dutton made to the Victorian State Council about tackling this issue head-on. I think I'm very hopeful we're going to see something about this in the lead-up to the election, because ultimately the purse strings sit with the Commonwealth on this issue, and the national curriculum sits with the Commonwealth on this issue. And this is an issue that we need to be tackling, because kids are going to school, they're learning how to be social justice warriors. And by the time we get to year 9, some of them can barely count or read. This is an issue that Australians are not talking about openly. This is like The Voice. It's a sleeper issue. It's a culture war issue. And I think increasingly Conservative politics in this country needs to throw off the shackles of seeing, like populism, the term culture wars as being a pejorative. Politics is downstream from culture.
Absolutely. And Alex, I would argue, and I get emails, I get messages every week from people who say, I'm a Labor voter, I'm not Conservative, But the stuff happening in schools troubles me. My kid was obliged to do an acknowledgement of country before they gave a speech in primary school, or they've come home with information about pronouns and being given all sorts of information that is not relevant to them and should not be in the curriculum. So why can't the Conservatives in this country recognise the opportunity presented, particularly amongst migrant communities who are socially conservative, as well as your old school Labor voters who really do feel abandoned when it comes to these issues by Labor and the Greens? And recognise that opportunity.
I think that message is getting a... Yeah, look, I think it is an entirely important opportunity, and I think that message is getting through. Of course, one of the difficulties arises with the view that this is controlled through state and federal means, but ultimately the funding starts with the Commonwealth Government. The national curriculum is controlled by the Commonwealth Government. So this is a Commonwealth issue, and it is an election-winning issue. I absolutely agree with you, and look, I'm really hopeful this will be something we'll tackle head-on leading into the next election.
Well, what I'm suggesting, Alex, is you print out those words of Donald Trump and sneak them into the next Liberal Party room meeting. Just tuck them there under Peter Dutton's thing, under his notes there, and just, oh, Pete, can you just read this out, please? And you will win the next election. Slam dunk, hands down. Alex Antic, always great to chat to you here on Outside.